This is Kenny with another edition of the Yak with Mac. Welcome back. This week we talk to Dave Ruff, National Customer Experience Manager, and we talk about customer experience and leadership. Listen in. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody out there. This is Kenny with another edition of the Yak with Mac. Thank you so much for joining. And I've got to tell you, be prepared to laugh, be prepared to be inspired to do some great things, be prepared to learn a few things. I have got a phenomenal guest that I'm not sure. I had to pay him to come on board. I had to pay him several $100s to come spend some time. I'm kidding on that. To come spend some time with us today. But I've known this man for the last almost 4 years, and he inspires me every time I talk to him and I get the opportunity to be around him. So, leaders, this is the place to come to. This is where we want to inspire and encourage you so that you can be great influencers. The days are long past. I was just telling Dave in our pregame warm-up here that back in my day, back in as my store manager days in 1998 and 1999, seems like ancient history. Yeah, it was a little different. Maybe you could sometimes tell people what to do. That was never my style anyway, but you definitely can't just walk around telling people what to do these days. You have got to be an influencer. Okay, let's get to my special guest. This man is the National Customer Loyalty Experience Manager. He is doing some phenomenal work helping T-Mobile realize their vision to be that world-class company when it comes to customer experience. I'm talking about Mr. Dave Ruff. Dave, welcome,
Woo!
welcome to the podcast, man. It's great to have you on, and thank you for taking the time. I know how busy you are, actually. Um, hey,
Thanks
so
for having
let's
me, Kenny.
yeah, absolutely, man. We love the background. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of messages. Hey, how can I get that background? So um, hey, let's jump right in because I've got a lot I want to get to you to get to with you today. But let's jump right in because I think it's going to be important for the audience to know. I mean, you're really famous in the Northeast parts here, in both New York and up in New England. But there's a lot of parts of the rest of the country that may know your name but don't really know you. So walk us through your career journey, and you can go back as far as you want or as short as you want. But I think it's so going to be so important for our leaders out there that'll watch this to understand how you landed in the position that you landed in. So walk us through your career journey.
Yeah, sure, Kenny. I would say the journey started in 2004. So this was 17 years ago. It was a great year in New England. The Sox ended an 86-year curse for those baseball fans out there.
Yep.
The New England Patriots were well on their way to establishing a dynasty. So things were looking up in here in Boston, and that was at the time too that I was a senior in college. I was studying to be a high school history teacher, and a buddy of mine that I used to work for at Circuit City, may it rest in peace, he had recruited me to come work over at Sprint, working in sales in one of the stores nearby. And so started as a mobile expert, and just as time went on, I really, I've always enjoyed the human interaction of people and servicing folks, and I have a very strong competitive nature and wanting to win. Being a team player, really seeing a lot of success come from that. And so as time went on, I just kind of worked my way up the ladder chain within retail sales, right up through the store manager level, and was in that for just over 10 years, working in stores, and learned a lot from that. Some of it trial by error, and that's okay. And I finished in working in Dorchester, and it was one of the busiest stores, if not the busiest store at the time in all of New England, and just had a phenomenal team, like a rock star team. Made me love coming to work. We're all running on full cylinders and just taking care of customers, having strong NPS scores, great sales. It was just a great culture that was established in there. And about 3.5 years into that role, an opportunity presented itself for training. And so having that educational background in teaching, and then just experience with sales and developing and mentoring people, it was the perfect storm for me. So 2015, I ended up becoming one of the trainers supporting both core and TPR for New England and upstate New York. And so that's where I had the opportunity to facilitate things like new hire training, building relationships with folks out in the field. At the time, I really only knew people like in the district, or maybe like a surrounding district or two, from working in sales as a manager. So this really allowed for me to connect with various people groups, other folks outside of those 1, 2 districts that I may have known. And I've worked in several different capacities within training, whether it was an individual contributor or a people manager, where I had the most humble opportunity to have you as my leader, Kenny, for a couple years, which was
Yep.
just nothing short of astounding. I learned so much from you as a leader and as a mentor of mine. So once the merger took place last year, I landed a role in training as a leadership trainer, and still supporting for a while New England and upstate New York. And then when we had one of those reorgs late last year, I then supported all of TPR for both the East and the West area, and national sales, and did that for a few months before my good pal, Mr. Will Whitehead, who's the director of customer loyalty, came knocking on my door. And he's like, hey, Ruffage, because that's what he calls me on occasion. He's like, hey, man, I need you. I need you on my team. And so the rest was history. So I support some of my main responsibilities on the customer loyalty team. And for those that may not be aware, although I'm sure most of you are, the whole customer loyalty campaign is supporting T-Mobile customers that are on Sprint plans and the Sprint biller, and really making sure that we're taking really good care of them, resolving everything that they come into the store for, converting them onto the T-Mobile network through TNXing, and then just all the tools and resources that we have out there. So I help out with the training piece. So I collaborate with various people groups within training and content creation, instructional design, partnering with folks in the field, partnering with folks within customer loyalty. We have almost 900 folks spread across the U.S. that support this campaign, and there's just no shortage of talent on this team. I just can't speak enough about them and what they're doing to reducing the number of 7-day interaction DX, making sure that we're staying strong on MBA utilization and TNXing customers, NPS, the whole nine. So it's definitely different being part of go to market. Things come in hot, things come in fast and furious. So you have to be very quick and be able to pivot and adapt based on the needs that are going on in the field. So that's just a little bit of my journey there.
Amazing journey. And I knew most of it. Some of it I wasn't quite aware of, but I knew most of it, and just amazing there. I want to go back to two things. You said a lot of great things that I'd love to go back to, but for the sake of time, just two things that are going to be a little bit more relevant as we get into that customer experience, customer loyalty piece, because I do want to get your take on what should leaders be doing, what's some advice for them. But you mentioned your Dorchester store, and you mentioned the culture that you have built there, and I happen to be familiar with that location. It's very, I'm sure today it's still crazy busy there. And so what were some things that you did to build that culture? That didn't just happen poof overnight. What were some specific things that you did?
Yeah, sure. When I first became a Ram, I learned in the early going. Like I loved like coaching people, and my mindset was to only help them become better. And so my focuses weren't well balanced. And by that, I mean, I was focusing more on opportunities for the team. It's like, hey, this was good, but, you could have done X, Y, and Z maybe a little bit better. And here's
Ah,
how. And so I realized that, like, okay, I need to have a little bit more balanced feedback when I'm supporting the team. So it took me some time to make those adjustments and really have that type of focus. So when I was in Dorchester, yeah, that definitely was a big part, a big helping hand was to make sure that let's focus even more so like on the wins than there are in the opportunities. And we're all human, we're not perfect. The intentions were well, but I wanted to make sure that they were being encouraged. And I always feel like encouragement is like oxygen for the soul. And so
Love that.
I really think it's super helpful to make sure that we shout out the wins, but we're specific, not just like, hey, Kenny, my man, good job with that last customer. Okay, thanks. And so I think you have to really be specific
Yeah.
as to, what behavior did you observe from that employee that really stood out to you that you were like, good, that was it. That's what we want to see. That those are the things, and you have to be very genuine and authentic about it. If you come off as Mr. Roboto or I'm monotone Bueller, like no, like that's it's just you're not gonna really get just like okay this guy Dave like, he's just going through the motions whatever and just brush me off and that's that. That will have a huge impact on the relationship building piece. And so another thing too that I helped was having sync sessions, or the time we call one-on-one. So getting together once a month. And here in New England, I was notorious for having the longest sync sessions of life. They would go like legit like an hour. Because I'm getting to know them and having them tell their story to recap the previous month's performance and what's the game plan for the new month. So just being genuinely curious and wanting to know, like, to hear them out because they put in work to prepare too. I want them to see if they're able to identify, things that went well for them or some things that they need to focus on. So it's very important for me to eliminate distractions, be laser focused, listen. I would take copious notes to make sure I captured everything correctly. And again, that really helped build the solid relationship so that we could have that culture in the store that like, hey, we all want to succeed. We're all in it together as a team.
That's really a blueprint for creating that warm, welcoming culture that not only customers walking in can feel, but when you want to recruit and hire people, people, I want to work there. I love it, all of that. And I'm going to say this one more time, and I'll make sure it's in our notes. Encouragement is oxygen for the soul. I love that. I mean, that is just it's so true. You think about how we feel when we're encouraged, but I love how you also said you got to be specific on it too, right? When
Yeah.
you're giving that great feedback. All right, here one of the things that I've always loved about you among a lot was that your decision making skills and how they just evolved over the years and they got better and better. And you mentioned to me in your current role, things come in very hot, very fast. And you're a very well thought out, person. You have a process where you weigh things and sometimes it might take you a day or two, to make a decision. How have you now adapted that into this very fast-paced, things coming in hot and heavy, got to take action right away? How have you adapted that and still maintain the great decision-making skill that you have really developed over the years?
Yeah, sure. I think some of that I can contribute to Will Whitehead himself.
Mhm.
So with Will, he's accustomed to thinking fast, and what I listen closely in on is the types of questions that he'll ask. And so I kind of keep that back of mind, like, okay, what are some questions that I can start asking myself in my head that will allow for things to kind of accelerate a little bit faster rather than kind of just let it simmer, dwell on it, because that's my natural tendency is to really put thought into it, let it simmer overnight and see what I can come up with that would make the most sense. So it's definitely that's been one of the bigger challenges for me because if you make a split decision, well, was the most effective decision? Then you start second guessing yourself. So I've learned a lot from Will just in terms of thinking about what type of questions to ask myself to help better prepare me for that.
That's awesome. That is really, really awesome. And I think for me, as I saw the evolution, because I didn't know you as a store manager, but as I saw the evolution of your decision-making skills, I felt like while we were still pretty fast-paced in training, there was time. There was time to make decisions, and you utilized it really, really well. It sounds like in your current position, there's not a whole heck of a lot of time, but I love that, asking a lot of questions and really looking at others that's already good at it, like Will, who's just an unbelievable leader. I think that's outstanding. I can't have you on now without now shifting into your current role and with all the great experience that you have. And we've got a lot of new leaders out there that'll be watching this from all different, channels. When it comes to customer loyalty, what's two or three things that leaders can be doing to really create that memorable experience, within their stores or within their offices? What would be some of your advice, especially for new leaders?
Sure. I think one of the things that you have to be aware of is having that level of awareness of that potential fear factor, where I may not be so comfortable assisting a T-Mobile customer on a sprint plan and the sprint biller, where I may not see it every day, all day, every day. I may not be as comfortable with it because I feel like if I do something, I might make a mistake and start to reach for that panic button. And so that's okay.
Yeah.
And we want to really make sure that folks have all the tools and resources that they need. So it's really making sure that, like, hey, I need to be proactive and really make sure that I've got everything I need to assist these customers, because every customer is an opportunity. And so not only do we want to identify pain points, but we also want to come up with a complete, robust solution for them to help them out, some of which may translate into a potential sale. And so just think about it like, you may have heard, you hear the scenario like, imagine it's your grandma that comes into the store. How would you treat her? So if she, was having issues with her device and she's someone on the Sprint biller on a Sprint plan, how are you gonna go about handling that? Are you gonna go ahead and resolve that issue, or are you just gonna start reaching for that panic button, like, and like, need help, help me out? So it's very important to have that level of awareness and that mindset of like, how am I gonna approach this?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that's very, very to the point. That's very specific that you gave there. You and I spent some time reading a book, Blue Ocean Strategy. So leaders out there, pick that book up. I think it's great. Yeah, I'm going to recommend that to our All In Book Club. I know the guys watch this. And so Blue Ocean Strategy is a lot to it, but just in a nutshell, is creating something that nobody else is doing. Mostly the book, reflects onto companies, right? Like Airbnb and Uber and, Twitter even back in the day, coming up with something that no one else was doing outside the competition. When I look at, not just wireless, but a lot of different companies, everybody says, oh, we're customer friendly, we're customer loyalty. You see commercials and things like that. But what are a couple of things that you can do to differentiate yourself, and whether I'm leading, and I'm talking about like right within, a store, right within a district, right within a team. How do I start to think about doing something that nobody else is doing?
Great question, Kenny. I think it starts with being aware. For those folks that are in store on a regular daily basis, know that your pair of eyes that you have, your pair of ears that you have, stuff goes a long way. And I think when you observe certain things and your creative juices start flowing, like, oh man, you know what? This would be a great solve for, issue X, Y, and Z. And it's great to see that T-Mobile has something like T-Action where you can submit that type of feedback to know that like your voice is being heard. And so, because you never want to have that mindset of like, well, I see this, but I'm just an ME, or I'm just a RAM, whatever. Who's going to listen to me? Well, people listen. And so when
Yeah.
when you're proactive about that stuff, it really goes a long way. So that's certainly one of the first things that comes to mind. And I think to T-Mobile's credit too, like with on carrier moves and things like that, I feel like that type of creativity, it stems from just listening to the people,
Yeah.
identifying those pain points, and then you see the other guys start to follow suit, like with our
Yeah.
Magenta Max and no deprioritization. Now we're starting to see the competition just following suit. So it's
Yeah.
great to see, T-Mobile being innovators with that. So I think that's where when you see things, when you hear things, where a light bulb goes off, do something about it.
Love that. Absolutely. Love that. Love that. Great advice for our new leaders. Let me shift back to you as we start to get into the home stretch here. What does Dave do to develop himself every day?
Sure. So one of the things is certainly reading. I do like to read articles in the Harvard Business Review. Even though I'm from Boston, I'm not like biased or anything like that. It's just
I
it's
was just going to ask, wow, that's a shocker, right?
but it's got really
It
great
does.
content in
Yeah.
there that they provide, and I like things that get you thinking, and that makes you take a step back and reflect. I also like to listen to podcasts, so especially like leadership podcasts. So I'm a big, as you know, Kenny, I'm a big advocate, just as you, on John Maxwell.
Yep.
He just provides incredible leadership insights. For those that are not aware, he's just a world-renowned leader, and there's a great number of quick hit videos on Percipio for John Maxwell. He has his own podcast on Spotify, for instance, and it's done regularly. So I love to just be able to listen to see certain things that he has to say. Those are just a couple of things that I go
That's
about
awesome.
developing myself. And then on the tech side, because I like to be immersed, I'll go on certain, blog sites and stuff just to see like what all the chatter is going out there in the tech world, in the wireless industry, to see like, hey, what are other folks, what's going on and stuff like that. Just to have some of that knowledge base, I find helpful to help develop myself.
That's awesome. And I love that. And you're very, very intentional on self-development. In fact, sometimes you'll send me a note, hey, I'm very angry. I'm a little bit behind because I've just been so busy. I need to get back to listening, watching, and things like that. That is awesome. Great, great, great advice. My
Oh,
last
and
question
Kenny,
for you. Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Kayak with Mac podcast. Just throwing
Yeah.
that out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dave.
They are awesome.
Appreciate
They're
that.
awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'm the last reason why they're awesome is because of guests like you that make it awesome. So, my next to last question, because I can't, I have to ask a Red Sox question. So I'll ask that in just a bit. Who's been your biggest influence? You influence a lot of people and you inspire a lot of people every single day. Who's been your biggest influence throughout your career and life?
I would probably say the same as your last guest with Dan. I think he mentioned his father, and that
Yes.
certainly same goes for me. Is my dad. I've always looked to him as my hero. The way that the amount of time that he invested in me is just, and like that he never gave up on me, as many times of a knucklehead as I was growing up, and going through those phases and stages of life. He's always stood by my side and supported me, and he's just given me so much wisdom over the years. So if I'm trying to, if I, especially when it comes to some big decision making, I tend to lean to talk to him, and he'll listen and really give me some great words of wisdom. So my dad is definitely biggest influence in my life.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that. And you'll watch the video here. Your eyes lit up when you mentioned your dad. I love that. I love that. And you've spoken about him very freely and openly over the years that I've known you.
Yeah.
All right. I tell you, and I shouldn't say all right because I like the Red Sox. I'm not a Yankee fan. I'm a Met fan. So
No one's
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, we can't be perfect. Are you surprised at the type of year this team is having, the Red Sox? Were you surprised that they, last year was so bad and without Mookie Betts, without Jackie Brad, I mean, they traded their whole outfield, because they traded the other guy, the left fielder, out to the Royals, I think, and then they've gone without Chris Sale. I mean, are you surprised that they have the record that they have? I mean, they're just having a phenomenal season.
Sure, being a baseball fan that I am, I'd like to say that I'm wicked smart and I've got it. I was like, oh yeah, I follow this stuff. Like, of course, they'll be fine. Last year was an off year, whatever. It was during the pandemic, at its peak and all that. But no, yeah, I definitely I was a bit. I was not expecting that much of an improvement year over year. And I think a lot of that contributes certainly to having Alex Cora back at the helm as
Yeah,
the leader of that team in the
yeah.
dugout, and the influence and impact he has on the players. So I know you're only as good as your team. Well, I think certainly being an influential leader has a significant impact on the outcome of a team as well. And so it's really nice to see the team camaraderie just continue to grow as the season progresses. So it's pretty exciting.
It is. It is. It's a great story. And the kudos for Alex Cora doesn't seem to come much because I think people are still, yeah, but what he did with the Astros, what he did, with the whatever, it's like, come on, move on and give the guy his due, because you notice you don't hear people really talking about him that much, but I think he's the main reason. I'm glad you said that. I mean, listen, they still have some great players, but he's the main reason. I think leadership is so important, and I think it's such a great example of how leadership can be so important. Dave Ruff, this has been just an enormous amount of fun. Got to get you back on maybe later in the year as we really will look at the success story that is the T-Mobile story of customer experience. And you, with all of the touch points that you have, are a big part of it. So we'll look back and give the leaders like you and Will some great kudos as well, because you're influencing and impacting the people out there in the field that are doing all the right things. So it's been fun having you, man.
It's an honor, Kenny, always to be in your graces. So thanks so much for inviting me and having me on, and always good to connect. And I'm willing to do it again under one condition, that we get some wings.
That sounds good. So we'll be talking and chopping on some wings at the same time. No worries. Sounds great. On that note, folks, please share this. This was great advice from someone that's been there, that's been in the trenches and has just done an outstanding job at every level that he's been at. So for now, this has been Kenny and Dave with the Yak with Mac. We will talk to you next week. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Kenny.